My teacher, let me see again. It's the obvious answer to Jesus' question. What else would a blind man ask for? Well, it may be the obvious answer, but it isn't actually always the answer given. No one wants to be blind. That's not really the deeper question here, which is whether or not we really want to see. Do we really want to see the reality of our lives? Things done and left undone. Who we are, who we are not. Do we really want to see the needs of our neighbor, the needs of the marginalized and poor? Do we really want to see the injustices of the world? Do we really want to see who Jesus is and not just who we wish or want him to be? Do you really want to see? That's the question Bartimaeus must answer. For true seeing is more than simply observing with our physical eyes. It requires relationship. Not just a simple relationship, but a relationship with deep knowing and understanding. This happens when we see with the eyes of faith. But we know, don't we, that seeing is not without risk. For if we really want to see, we must be willing to change, to be changed. We must be willing to leave behind what is to receive what might be. Sometimes, if you're at all like me, sometimes that risk is just a little bit too much. And so what do? We turn a blind eye and choose not to see. Of course, this is not about physical blindness, right? It's a spiritual condition. Think back to Peter. Peter rightly declared Jesus to be the Christ, but when Jesus began to teach about his own suffering, rejection, his death, Peter rebuked him. Peter could not see how that could be the way of the Messiah, God's anointed one. The disciples, they argued amongst themselves about who was the greatest. They were unable to see that whoever wants to be first must be last of all, servant of all. The rich man wanted to inherit eternal life, but he could not see his way clear to selling all his possessions, giving the money to the poor. Now, for most of us, life is not all seeing or all blindness. There are times when we get it. There are times when we don't. That is, I believe, how it was for Bartimaeus as well. It wasn't always darkness for him. Remember, Bartimaeus asks to see again. And at the end of the story, we are told that he regained his sight. And so there was a time when Bartimaeus saw. There was a time when he and his world were filled with light. And so here is a man who has known darkness as well as light. He has had vision. He has been blind. Both are a reality for Bartimaeus. Both are a reality for us. Jesus offers to us a clear vision of what true life looks like. And to the extent we don't share that vision, well, we are blind. We do live in darkness. As tragic as blindness is, the greater tragedy is when we do not even see, we do not even know that we are blind. So we bump and stumble our way through life, believing that this is as good as it gets. We are content to sit by the roadside and beg. And how and what we see then determine the world we live in, the life we live. Bartimaeus knows this. He's a blind beggar going nowhere. The world passes by. His life remains unchanged. Every day the same. Every day he sits by that roadside, holds out the cloak of his blindness, and begs. He lives in darkness, no illumination within or around him. The darkness covers him like a second cloak. At some point or another, all of us sit by the roadside, a beggar, cloaked in darkness, unable to see. For we are blind, and sometimes the blindness is the darkness of grief, sorrow, loss. Sin and guilt blind us to what our life could be. Other times we live in the darkness of fear, anger, resentment. Doubt and despair can easily and profoundly distort and impair our vision. Failures, disappointments, shattered dreams can darken our world. There are times when we hide amongst the shadows, neither wanting to see nor to be seen. And perhaps the deepest darkness is when we become lost to ourselves, not knowing who we are or the beauty of our own creation and existence. The list could go on. The darkness fills and covers us in so very many different ways. I don't know what caused Bartimaeus' blindness. In some ways, I don't think it matters. What does matter here is that he knew he was blind. And with amazing and desperate courage, he held his blindness before Christ, believing and hoping that there was more to who he was and what his life could be. And it was out of that knowing, believing, and hoping that he cried out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." That's the cry of one abandoning himself, herself to God. The one who cannot see cries out to be seen. And it is that cry that stopped Jesus right in his tracks. Mercy is like that. "Call him here," Jesus said. With that calling, the depths of human darkness meet the heights of divine light. Misery meets compassion, and what is meets what might be. Bartimaeus stands before Jesus. Jesus asks him, "What do you want me to do for you?" And that is not just a question for Bartimaeus. It's a question for everyone who has ever sat by the roadside of life, everyone who has ever lived in darkness, everyone who has ever begged for life. It's a question for you. It's a question for me. And it's a question Jesus asks of us over and over again and again. There is no universal answer. There is only our answer at this time and place in our life. Tomorrow's answer may well be different from today's. But Jesus' question offers us a turning point, the possibility of a new beginning. It asks us to look deep within ourselves, to face what is, and to actually name what we want. So, what do you want Jesus to do for you? I'm not asking what would make you feel better, fix a particular problem, make your life more comfortable. No. What is the one thing you need this day that will open your eyes to see yourself, others, all creation as beautiful and holy? What is the one thing you need today that will allow you to throw off the cloak of darkness? What is the one thing you need today that will take you from sitting and begging by the roadside to following on the way? These are hard but important questions. The questions that can change your life. I don't know what your answer is. I cannot name it for you. But I can promise you this: Jesus is listening. Jesus is willing. Jesus is able.